Hello, everybody. We are here broadcasting directly from the 9th International Congress on Healthy Aging and Longevity. And today we have a great pleasure to have a big, wonderful person in my right side, Professor Walter Longo, a very worldwide renowned scientist. His brilliant research on longevity, diet, and everything that makes good lifestyle and good life choices can make you live longer and better. And Professor Walter has a wonderful book, actually a bestseller, named The Longevity Diet. Professor Walter, a great pleasure to have a scientist of this big with us today.
Well, thanks for
Welcome
inviting
to
me.
Brazil.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Well, let's start asking Professor Walter. Tell us about your overall ideas that came birth to your wonderful book, Longevity Diet. What exactly does it mean, and the basic concept you explain in your book?
Yeah. So the main idea was to move away from stories or ideas about food and longevity, and use a 5-pillar system to come up with something that is consistent with epidemiological studies, clinical studies, basic research on longevity, how do you make a mouse live longer, and then studies of centenarians, right? So what do the centenarians in Okinawa, Sardinia, Costa Rica, Loma Linda, California, what do they all have in common? What do they do that matches the clinical work, the epidemiological work? Yeah. So that was the longevity diet, and I think it's important. I always say, if you think about convicting somebody in a courtroom, you cannot have just one piece of evidence, right? And yet with nutrition, often we only have the epidemiology to make a decision. Is protein good or bad? Is sugar good or bad? So I think it was important to bring that in, and to then focus on longevity and aging, and not just on short-term effect, right? So something could be very beneficial for you in 6 months, and then kill you 20 years before you should die, many years later, right? So that's very important to look at the health now, but the health, can you make it to 110
Long
healthy?
term.
Yeah.
Very interesting. And one thing that I was thinking right here is, it's intriguing and ironic, because the disease and the health seems to come through the same sources, the mouth, isn't it? What you put inside your mouth can make a huge difference in how well we will live. And I would like to have your thoughts on this intriguing question.
Yeah, so there are two reasons for that. One of them, for sure, is this world epidemic on obesity and overweight, right? So the United States is now 72% overweight and obese. South America, Europe, is
Very similar.
following very closely. Now Italian children are as overweight as American children. I don't know about Brazil, but imagine similar.
Exactly
right?
the
Similar.
same.
For first one is that, and that's clearly at the center of Alzheimer, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, etc., etc. And then is also the aging process. So for example, certain high levels of proteins are accelerating the aging process by activating TOR, IGF-1, etc., etc., etc. So there is at least two ways for food to be bad for you, and then the third way is also the inflammations, the autoimmunities. So whether it's gluten, or it could be tomatoes, it could be meat, it could be milk. So different people are accepting of certain foods and intolerant, or may develop an autoimmunity to other foods. So we have to personalize, and that's as important. So you could have the perfect diet, you can be normal weight, but if that particular if that tomato skin is causing inflammation, you got a problem, right? Or say gluten. Until you stop that, you are gonna suffer, and that, I think, in most cases involves the entire system, with inflammation and accelerated aging.
In your opinion, what should be considered the most powerful enemies coming from food sources? like gluten, and as Professor O'Brien brilliantly
Yeah,
showed
I
last
don't.
Friday.
Yeah, I wouldn't demonize anything in particular. I think that if you look for the ideal diet all over the world, and this just was confirmed by meta-analysis that came out recently, a plant, mostly plant-based with plus fish diet, say 2 or 3 times a week, seems to be ideal, right? With nuts and like almonds, hazelnut nuts being included in the diet, lots of vegetables, lots of legumes. That to me seems to be ideal. Keeping the meat, the red and white meat to a minimum, and keeping the dairy products either out or to a minimum. This seems to be true all the way to age 65, 70. After that, interestingly, it seems like the nourishment becomes more important than the effect of the components on let's say cancer. And so lots of people in their 80s and 90s, they die of an infection, right? They die of weakness, frailty. And so now I think let's say the yogurt, the more meat, more nourishment, more amino acids, more proteins seem to be as important, right? So then you can't go to an excess, but you have to bring it up to a moderate level. And this is why we see the centenarians very clearly, in most cases, they had this very poor diet, lots of legumes, lots of vegetables, things that they could sort of grab from their own yard. But then by the time they got to 70 or 80, they moved in with their sons and daughters and they started eating a lot more. And we think that this phenomenon is probably what got them to have this record longevity in Okinawa and in southern Italy and everywhere else in the world, right? So I think we need to reproduce that, right, in the healthiest way possible.
Another very interesting concept you explain in your book is about fast mimic diet. Would you tell us a little about this?
Yeah, so I think we in a lot of research in mice and humans, we realize that most people are stuck in what I call a summer mode, right? So in the summer, historically, 20,000 years ago, we used to have lots of fruits and honey and nuts, and we ate a lot, right? And then we got accumulated as much fat as possible. And then the winter, almost unavoidably, or the period where there was no food came, and then that unlocked this insulin resistance was created. And so it was like a pre-diabetic or even diabetic state. And that was important for survival, right? Then the winter came, or the low food period came, and that got reversed. And so the fasting mimicking diet has the job to unlock that, bring you back to insulin sensitivity. And now we have 3 or 4 clinical trials that confirm this very clearly. If people just did it once a month, we can take diabetics, reduce the drug use, and then many of them become diabetes free. And so that's one job. But the other job, of course, is going after the hormones and going after resetting the system to a more functional state. So this is probably a very simple concept. If you fast, the body shrinks. If you fast long enough, it'll shrink by 30-40%. It's really remarkable, right? Months. But of course, we don't want to do that. So we use a fasting mimicking diet, so something that replaces the water-only fasting. So this is 800 to 1100 kilocalories per day, and it's plant-based, right? And it's a high-fat, low protein, low sugar. So then the other job is to shrink you, and then when you eat normally again, re-expand, right? And this shrinking is an opportunity to get rid of a lot of junk, and then the re-expansion is in mice is very clear. In humans, we're still learning, but stem cells are turned on everywhere, right? In the pancreas, in the brain, in the gut, and they stand by and they wait for this high nourishment period. And so then they re-expand. It makes sense, right? So you shrink, you eat yourself, right? You get rid of junk.
Like an autophagy. Like that.
Autophagy, but much more than autophagy. Autophagy is just a small part of it, right? It's a big program of breakdown. Imagine like a section of the city that is run down, right? So autophagy is like bringing the buildings down, right? Then there is this very sophisticated program to rebuild everything, right? And that's where you have to plan everything. And that's what the body is able to do, have sophisticated plans, and then all the material to rebuild, as if you were just born, right? So this is why the power, of course, this is what I call 3 billion years of research and development, right? This is started, billions of years ago, and that's why it's so sophisticated. It's almost impossible to reproduce.
Wonderful, fascinating. Professor, to come to a happy end, according to all your knowledge, all your research, would you tell us, is there a gold medalist advice regarding healthy and living healthier and longer lives? What's the medalist of this game?
Yeah, so I think is the longevity diet that I described earlier is fasting for 12 hours a day. Let's say eat between 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. and that's it. If you're overweight or obese, go to 2 meals a day plus a snack. Let's say always breakfast plus lunch or plus dinner, right? And then as the third meal, have like 100-calorie like vegan snack, right? And then say about 3 fasting mimicking diet a year, 2 to 3. I mean, if you're very, very healthy, maybe 2 is enough. If you're unhealthy, maybe 4 or 5, and the average person probably 3 FMDs per year.
Absolutely fantastic. I would like to say thank you very much, Professor, for this moment, and I hope you enjoy your stay in Brazil. I say to you, I'm very honored having you here among us, and God bless you so much.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you very much, you all.